Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Newsgram. Remember those early days of the pandemic? Not just the empty streets or the empty grocery store shelves, but the way life itself seemed to pause. The skies were clearer, the traffic was gone, and for many of us, the noise of daily routine just gave way to a deeper kind of self-reflection. Many of us began to reevaluate our situations in an effort to figure out just what exactly are we doing with our lives. A lot of books were written during the pandemic, and a lot of personal stories were shared that may not have been shared otherwise. Where were you when it all began to happen? In February of 2020, I was on a cruise ship, which turned out to be one of the last cruises for quite some time, because in March, the world began to change. Steve Gleadhill was also on vacation.
We were in Australia at the time because my wife and I used to spend 6 months in Australia to get out of the British winter. But as it happened, when COVID happened, Australia was one of the first countries to be very strict about letting people in and out. And so we were there. We were meant to go in April and we were there till July. So we were actually there 9 months, not 6 months as normal. That also prompted me to think, right, well, this is something I've never experienced before.
Steve Gleadhill is more than just a casual observer. He has spent a lifetime asking questions and serving his community. Born in Hull, England in 1950, he studied English at Leeds University, and then spent 20 years with the Newcastle City Library before moving into community and government liaison work across northeast England. So when the pandemic hit, his instinct was to start documenting it, not just for himself, but for everyone.
I was in the habit of emailing friends back in the UK on a regular basis, and normally it would be went down to the beach, got sunburnt or whatever, but this time it was about, well, I've read about this, I've read about that. It started with me emailing almost weekly bulletins to my friends in the UK about all the different aspects of COVID. Kept me busy, hopefully of interest to them.
This is where Steve says he had mixed emotions, because while he was living safely in Australia, his loved ones were having a much tougher time of it in the UK. It was pretty bad there. Anyway, what started as a series of emails and conversations turned into something much bigger. Ultimately, it'll be a 4-part series of books on both the immediate catastrophic impact the crisis had, as well as its long-term ramifications. The first 3 books are readily available, and they're titled, Oh Brave New Normal World, Living with Coronavirus. Today, let's focus on Book 2, Reverberations.
The idea is to remember what we went through and then sort of think, well, did we actually learn from that experience? And that's what the Reverberations is about. It's about, there were repercussions because of the COVID. That's what I'll try to outline in that book.
Future books in the series will widen the lens to take on political and global affairs. Think back to the Capitol riots here in the U.S. Enough said about that, but we all remember. In Britain, leadership turned into a revolving door of prime ministers, and across Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, and Germany, there were also leadership changes, showing just how much political change was happening at the time.
But in this one, it's about how that initial effect affected us and what we were, how we reacted to it. And then I would like people to go back and think, well, did we lose that? Did we lose something as a result of having been forced to lock down and do all the other things?
So let's take a step back and think about those early days of the lockdown. I realize that for many of you it's not a pleasant memory, but it's an exercise to help us gain some perspective, which will hopefully bring a new kind of strength and wisdom.
We were stuck at home most of the time, and I just started reading some of the daily news, and whereas normally I skip over it, I started to get more interested. And what I got interested in was not just the medical side, but how it was affecting us, society, the planet, etc.
American philosopher George Santayana once said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." History gives us wisdom. When something new and overwhelming hits, We rarely get it right the first time. We certainly made mistakes here in the U.S. But if we take the time to look back, to examine the choices that were made, we do have the chance to evolve and maybe avoid repeating the same mistakes. And that's what's at the heart of Steve's series.
What Johnson and Trump did was they were almost in denial, I felt, at the beginning. In Britain, you had Johnson, who decided he was going to go to a rugby match. There was a football match held in Liverpool against Madrid, which actually at the time was the centre of where most of the illnesses and deaths was happening. At the time, Madrid was like a no-go area. If you saw Johnson, it was almost as if he was like, well, I think I can braid my way through this. And that's what he tried to do. But then reality came and he realised that he needed to do a lot more. And I just felt that with the leaders, that there was a thing where at first I think they were hoping it would just go away. And when it didn't...
Well, the rest is history. He focuses primarily on the UK, Australia, and the US, but the books are global in their focus, including the crisis in India.
India had a very bad bout of doing it, of deaths, etc., and what was happening. So I did want to make sure that I certainly didn't want to just focus on the UK, because I didn't feel that would give people the idea of exactly what was happening globally.
Something I found particularly troubling was how numb we became to the ongoing death toll. And I don't mean to sound insensitive here, but in isolation, really all we could do was watch the numbers climb.
But I didn't want to home in. I didn't basically want to say, oh, well, here are the statistics for the thing. Because it wasn't that it wasn't incidental, but it was only one factor of everything that was happening to us.
So he focuses instead on things that you may not have considered, like the animals or our environment.
But the animals, it was quite interesting because, again, once COVID came in, you suddenly found these animals reappearing where they used to be, where they're not. And the story in Australia is that there were kangaroos going along the streets of Adelaide during the COVID. Because, apparently they were bouncing about through the streets because nobody was there and they were doing it. And there's a wonderful cartoon of these animals looking through a window at humans, like we would look through them in a zoo, and it was quite funny. But yeah, then of course, what happened was, again with pollution, for instance, one of the statistics I came across in one of the books was the amount of deaths through pollution normally is very high, and suddenly it dropped fantastically during, because of the factories were shut, etc. There wasn't all the stuff there. But yet, very quickly, of course, we're back to that level of pollution.
Have we learned any lessons at all? That's the key takeaway here. He says for a moment our country's wildlife got a reprieve, but now the numbers of animals on the endangered species list is absolutely horrific. We do have the wisdom of perspective, but are we smart enough to do anything with it? I guess that's the million-dollar question. It's also why his book cover features a finger pushing a globe over a cliff.
It's not just the globe, it's the fact is somebody's pushing it over the edge, and that's exactly the feeling I wanted to generate among readers in looking at the book. We came close. I don't want to be over dramatic. I don't think we came close to the world ending, but we came close to pushing ourselves and certain things to that edge. When I look at some of the politics, even now, they are results of what we went through in that time.
The book is Reverberations, Book 2, Oh Brave New Normal World, Living with Coronavirus, by Steve Gleadhill. Was COVID a turning point for humanity, pushing the world to the edge? And are we wise enough to apply the lessons it taught us? The answers are going to differ for each of us, but the questions are worth asking. You can find the books now on Amazon or wherever you like to shop for books online. And that will do it for this edition of Newsgram from webtalkradio.com. Thanks for listening.